The Golden Bird, from the Brothers Grimm. The King of the East had a beautiful garden, and in the garden grew a tree that bore golden apples. These apples were always counted, and about the time when they began to grow ripe, it was found that every night one of them was gone. The king was told this, and he ordered a watch to be kept under the tree all night. The king set the eldest of his 3 sons to watch, but about 12 o'clock he fell asleep, and in the morning another of the apples was missing. Then the second son was set to watch, and at midnight he too fell asleep, and in the morning another apple was gone. Then the third son offered to keep watch, but the king at first would not let him, for fear some harm should come to him. However, at last he yielded, and the young man laid himself under the tree to watch. As the clock struck 12, he heard a rustling noise in the air, and a bird came flying and sat upon the tree. This bird's feathers were all of pure gold. And as it was pecking at one of the apples with its beak, the king's son jumped up and shot at it. The shot, however, did the bird no harm. It only dropped a golden feather from its tail and flew away. The golden feather was then brought to the king in the morning, and all his council were called together. Everyone agreed that it was the most beautiful thing that they had ever seen, and that it was worth more than all the wealth of the kingdom. But the king said, "One feather is of no use to me. I must and will have the whole bird." Then the eldest son set out to find this golden bird, and thought to find it very easily. And when he had gone but a little way, he came to a wood, and by the side of the wood he saw a fox sitting. The lad was fond of a little sport, so he took his gun and made ready to shoot at it. Then the fox cried out, "Softly, softly, do not shoot me. I can give you good counsel. I know what your business is, and that you want to find the golden bird. You will reach a village in the evening, and when you get there, you will see 2 inns built on each side of the street. The right-hand one is very pleasant and beautiful to look at, but go not in there. Rest for the night in the other, though it may seem to you very poor and mean." "What can such a stupid beast as this know about the matter?" thought the silly lad to himself. So he shot at the fox, but he missed it, and it only laughed at him and set its tail upon its back and ran into the wood. The young man went his way, and in the evening came to the village where the 2 inns were. In the right-hand one, people were singing and dancing and feasting, but the other one looked very dirty and poor. "I should be a fool indeed," said he, "if I went into that shabby house and left this charming place." So he went into the smart house and ate and drank at his ease, and there he stayed and forgot the bird and his father and the country too. Time passed on, and as the eldest son did not come back, and no tidings were heard of him, the second son set out in search of the golden bird. He met the fox sitting by the roadside, who gave him the same good advice that he had given his brother. But when he came to the 2 inns, his eldest brother was standing at the window where the merrymaking was, and called to him to come in, and he could not withstand the temptation. So he went in, joined the merrymaking, and lived only for pleasure. Time passed on again, and the youngest son, too, wished to set out into the wide world to seek for the golden bird. But his father would not listen to him. "For," said the king, "it is of no use. He is no more likely to find the golden bird than his brothers were. And if he should meet with an accident, he has not the sense to help himself. However, it was at last agreed he should go, for to tell the truth, he would not rest at home. As he came to the wood, he met with the fox, who begged for his life, and gave him the same good counsel that he had given the other brothers. But he spoke kindly to the fox, saying, "Have no fear, little fox, I shall not harm you." Then the fox said, "Sit upon my tail, and you will travel faster." So he sat down, and the fox began to run, and away they went over stock and stone so quickly that their hair whistled in the wind. When they came to the village, the young man got down and took the fox's advice. Without looking about him, he went straight to the shabby inn and rested there all night at his ease. In the morning, the fox came again and met him as he was beginning his journey, and said, "Go straight forward till you come to a castle, before which lie a whole troop of soldiers fast asleep and snoring. Take no notice of them, but go into the castle and pass on and on till you come to a room where the golden bird sits in a wooden cage. Close by it stands a beautiful golden cage, but do not try to take the bird out of the shabby cage and put it into the handsome one, otherwise you will be sorry for it." Then the fox stretched out his brush again, and the young man sat himself down, and away they went over stock and stone till their hair whistled in the wind. Before the castle gate, all was as the fox has said, so the lad went in and found the chamber where the golden bird hung in a wooden cage. But below stood the golden cage, and 3 golden apples that had been lost were lying around the room. Then he thought to himself, it would be ridiculous to bring away such a fine bird in this shabby cage. So he opened the door and took hold of the bird and put it in the golden cage. But it set up at once such a piercing scream that all the soldiers awoke, and they took him prisoner and carried him off to prison. The next morning the court sat to judge him, and as he confessed all, it doomed him to die, unless he should bring the king the golden horse that could run as swiftly as the wind. If he did this, he was to have the golden bird given him as a reward. So he set out once more on his journey, sighing and in great despair, when on a sudden he met his good friend the fox sitting in the road. "Now you see," said the fox, "what has happened from your not listening to my advice. I will still, however, tell you how you may find the golden horse, if you will do but as I bid you. You must go straight on till you come to the castle where the horse stands in his stall. By his side will lie the groom fast asleep and snoring. Take away the horse softly, but be sure to let the old leathern saddle be upon him, and do not put on the golden one that is close by." Then the young man sat down on the fox's tail, and away they went over stock and stone till their hair whistled in the wind. All went right, and the groom lay snoring with his hand upon the golden saddle. But when the lad looked at the horse, he thought it would be an insult to have such a fine beast not to put the good saddle on him. But no sooner had the golden saddle touched his back than the horse began to neigh so loud that all the grooms ran in and took him prisoner. And in the morning he was brought before the king's court to be judged, and was at once doomed to die. But the king promised that if he could bring thither the beautiful princess from the golden castle, he should live and have the horse given him for his own. Then he went his merry way again, very sorrowful. But the old fox once more met him on the road and said, "I ought to leave you to your fate. Yet I will once more give you counsel. Go straight on, and in the evening you will come to a castle. Every night, when all is quiet, the princess goes to the bath. Go up to her as she passes, and give her a kiss. and she will let you lead her away. But take care you do not let her go and take leave of her mother and father, or you will be sorry for it." Then the fox stretched out his tail, and away they went, over stock and stone, till their hair whistled again. As they came to the golden castle, all was as the fox had said, and at 12 o'clock the young man met the princess going to the bath, and gave her a kiss, and she agreed to run away with him, but begged with many tears that he should let her take her leave of her father. At first he said no, but she wept still more and fell at his feet, till at last he yielded. But the moment she came to her father's bed, the guards awoke, and he was taken prisoner again. So he was brought at once before the king, who lived in the castle, and the king said, "Your life is forfeit, unless in 8 days you dig away the hill that stops the view from my window." The king's son shovelled and dug without respite, and when he had worked for 7 days and had done very little, he grew sad to see that all his work was in vain, and he gave up hope. But the fox came and said, "Lie down and go to sleep. I will work for you." In the morning he awoke, and the hill was gone. So he went merrily to the king and told him that now it was gone, he must give him his princess. The king obliged to keep his word, and away went the young man with the princess. But the fox came again and said to him, "You have done well, but the golden horse goes with the princess." "Ah," said the young man, "that would be a great thing, but how can it be?" "If you will only listen," said the fox, "it can soon be done. When you come to the king of the castle where the golden horse is, and he asks for the beautiful princess, you must say, 'Here she is.' Then he will be very glad to see her, and you will have the golden horse led out as a present to you, and you will mount it and put out your hand to take leave of them, but shake hands with the princess last. When she grasps your hand, lift her quickly onto the horse behind you and gallop away as fast as you can. No one will be able to overtake you, for that horse is swifter than the wind." All went right. The king's son rode away on the golden horse with the princess. The fox said, "When you come to the castle where the bird is, I will stay with the princess at the door, and you will ride in and speak to the king. When he sees that it is the right horse, he will bring out the bird, and when you get it into your hand, ride back as fast as you can and pick up the princess again." This too happened as the fox said. As the king's son was about to ride home with the princess, the fox said, "Now you must reward me for my help." "What do you want?" said the prince. "Pray, kill me and cut off my head and my brush." The young man would not do any such thing to so good a friend. So the fox said, "Then we must part. I will at any rate give you good counsel. Beware of 2 things. Ransom no one from the gallows, and sit down on the rim of no well." Then he went away. "Well," thought the young man, "he's a strange beast. What fancies he has! Who would ransom people from the gallows? And as for sitting on the rim of a well, I never yet wanted to do it." So he rode with the princess till at last they came to the village where he had left his 2 brothers. And there he heard a great noise and uproar. And when he asked what the matter was, the people said, "2 rogues are going to be hanged." As he came nearer, he saw the 2 men were his brothers, who had turned robbers. He asked, "Can nothing save them from such a death?" But the people said, "No, unless you would bestow all your money upon the rascals and buy their freedom. But why should you spend good money on wicked men?" Then he did not stay to think about it, but paid whatever was asked, and his brothers were given up, and went on with him towards their father's home. Now the weather was very hot, and as they came to the wood where the fox first met them, they found it so cool and shady under the trees beside a well that the two brothers said, "Let us sit down by the side of this well and rest a while and eat and drink." "Very good," said he, and forgot what the fox had said, and sat down on the rim of the well. And while he thought no harm coming to him, they pushed him down the well, and took the princess, and the horse, and the bird, and went home to the king their father, and said, "All these we have won by our own skill and strength." Then there was great merriment made, and the king held a feast, and the two brothers were welcomed home. But the horse would not eat, the bird would not sing, and the princess sat by herself in her chamber and wept bitterly. But the youngest son was not dead. Luckily, the well was nearly dry, and he fell in soft moss and took no harm. But he could not find a way to get out. As he stood bewailing his fate and thinking what he should do, to his great joy he spied his old and faithful friend the fox looking down upon him. Then the fox scolded him for not following his advice, which would have saved him from all the troubles which had befallen him. "Yet," said he, "silly as you have been, I cannot bear to leave you here, so lay hold of my brush and hold fast." Then he pulled him out of the well and said to him as he got out, "You are not yet out of danger. Your brothers were not sure you were dead, and have surrounded the woods with guards who are to kill you on sight." So he changed clothes with a poor man who was sitting by the way, and came to the king's court. But he was scarcely within the gate, and the horse began to eat, and the bird began to sing, and the princess left off weeping. The king, in amazement, asked, "What can this mean?" Then the maiden said, "I know not how it is, but I was once so sad, and now I feel so happy. It seems to me as if my true love has come back." And she told him everything that had happened. Although the other brothers had threatened to kill her if she would betray them, the king had all the people who were in the castle brought to his presence, and the young man in his old rags came with them. But the maiden recognized him and fell on his neck. Then the wicked brothers were taken and put to death. But the third son was married to the princess and made the king's heir. But what became of the fox? A long time afterwards, the king's son was walking in the wood when he met the fox, who said, "Now you have all you can wish for, but there is no end to my misfortune, though it is in your power to set me free." And again he besought him, with tears in his eyes, to be so kind as to cut off his head and brush. At last he did so, though sorely against his will, and in the same moment the fox changed into a prince, and the princess knew him to be her own brother, who had been lost a great many years, for a spiteful fairy had enchanted him with a spell that could only be broken by someone getting the bird and by cutting off his head and his brush. The Golden Bird by the Brothers Grimm. I wonder what happened to that poor man in the prince's clothes in the wood. I hope somebody called the soldiers back.